Hey everyone, this is our History 304 Medieval Europe class. I'm Dr. Young. This is being recorded in summer term A of 2025. If you're watching this in a subsequent semester, some details may change, but the basic outline of the course should still be the same. I don't want to go through the entire syllabus, or rather, I should say, read the entire syllabus, but this is of course, about a period of time that covers roughly 1,000 years. But the main emphasis on it is a roughly 300-year-long period called the High Middle Ages, which runs from around the year 1000 to around about 1300. We'll spend half the class on that, just that 300 years. We will talk about the stuff that leads up to it, and then we'll spend 1 week on things that lead or that are after that. But that's the main emphasis. This class seeks to understand the political, religious, economic, cultural, and social development of Europe, specifically from the fragmentation of the Roman Empire in the 4th and 5th centuries to the Reformation of the 16th century. And its largest emphasis is on the cultural history and the religious history of the period. But we'll have plenty to say about the politics and the economics and the society and things like that as well. This, like all history classes, is meant to develop in you the ability to think critically, to research, to analyze things, read closely, to write and speak effectively. And the assignments and things are designed to do that. One of the things that I'll mention here is that the medieval world can be very strange. This is not something that you should expect to, not a situation where you should expect to find a lot of things that are familiar to you, even if you share some of the beliefs as people did in the Middle Ages, for instance, or you have an appreciation for this. I find the Middle Ages, and I've studied this for many, many years, and this is my main training and degrees and things like that is in this period. But I find it both endlessly fascinating and endlessly puzzling, and I might even say frustrating at times. And so that's okay. It's okay to be puzzled. I think that that's actually a good first step in the direction of learning, and so we're going to try to set aside our assumptions about the way the world works and encounter medieval people on their own terms, engage ourselves in what I call productive puzzlement, as I say here. And that means not to jump to, anachronistic or ethnocentric conclusions about the way things ought to have worked that may be informed by pop culture or something like that, or, even things like the History Channel, I don't know. But to seek to understand medieval people on their own terms. And this might require setting aside some notions that you already have about this period, or about the beliefs that people had in this period, and, being open to learning here. So that's all I want to say about that. For this iteration, this online iteration of the course, I do things somewhat differently from what I do in a regular classroom. There's some differences in readings and things, but I think this works fairly well. Hopefully it will work fairly well for the online setting. There is a textbook. I actually have this linked online. This textbook is now in its 4th or 5th edition, I believe, but I have on our course Canvas page, I've actually put a PDF copy of the 1st edition. If you have access to a later edition, that's fine. The chapters are pretty similar, if not identical. They just add some information about certain areas, but the 1st edition is a totally workable thing. There's also a source reader for this class, which is Patrick Geary's Readings in Medieval History, this in its 5th edition. This is also linked on Canvas, I will say. And so you have access to that. There are 3 other books you need for this class. There is 2 of these are primary sources, and one is a monograph, a rather brief monograph about the late Middle Ages. But the first of the longer primary sources is this text, a 12th century text by a guy named Galbert of Bruges, and it's about a murder. actually the murder of the Count of Flanders. And this was a real historical episode, and he kind of tells that story, and there's a lot that we can learn about the functioning of medieval society and politics and things like that from that text. And then the second one is Abelard and Heloise's letters and other writings. This is one of my very favorite things to read from the Middle Ages. It's a tragic love story, but one that has some interesting developments even after you think the story's over. It kind of picks up again, right? So we'll read what they had to say to each other. These were lovers. They actually ended up married to each other, but then the marriage, was not allowed to succeed, so to speak. And both of them ended up in convent or in abbeys and monasteries, despite being married. Abelard ended up as a monk. Heloise is a nun, actually an abbess. And so, there's a lot, again, that we can learn about the Middle Ages. This is one of the great tragic love stories of all of history. The one monograph you need to get for the class is David Herlihy's The Black Death and the Transformation of the West. This is not a long book. That's one of the main reasons why I chose it. It is a good study. It is somewhat dated at this point. It's about 30 years old. But that's okay. It's one that I think bears paying some attention to and reading about and thinking about the ways the Black Death did change medieval Europe. For the online version of the class, the main assignment is, or the assignment you have every single week is a discussion board. Every week by Thursday. So the way that online classes work at Flagler College, if you haven't taken one before, is that the week starts on Monday, and it goes until Sunday. And that's true for every week except for the last week of the course. For some reason, they ended on Friday, so it's a short week. There's only 5 days in the week instead of 7. But we'll deal with that when we come to it. By Thursday, so the week starts on Monday, you have a discussion board that will be posted on Canvas. I'll show you that in a minute. And you need to do the readings and watch video lectures and, basically expose yourself to the material. And then you make a discussion board post. You cannot see others' posts until you make a post yourself. The post needs to be at least 250 words. And then by Sunday, you need to make 2 responses to what other course mates have said. This is a pretty minimal requirement. I will say you can and perhaps should make more posts. The point of this exercise is to mimic or replicate in some way, it's an imperfect way, the kinds of discussions that we have in normal classes, right, in face-to-face classes. And discussion board posts or discussion board discussions can be really good. I've seen them. Some may see this as a rather tedious exercise, but I think that writing 250 words at the very least on, the week's material is a good way to organize your own thoughts about this and even to formulate some opinions about the things that you've read. So there's a purpose to this exercise. You can write more. I would encourage you to make more than just 2 posts. You can respond to the posts that I make. I will be a participant in the discussion board, and you get credit if you respond to what I say. And I will try to keep conversation going as much as I can as well. For every week, you have one of these assignments. It's only 10 points, but there are only 225 points possible in the class, so each discussion board week is roughly 5% of your grade, right? So overall, this adds up to 60 points because the course is 6 weeks long. If you've taken other history courses from me, or even if you haven't, there are 4 primary source-based papers for this class. We will read a fair number of the primary sources in the Geary sourcebook, and you need to write 2 papers. These are, and it's specify in the schedule which weeks you need to write these in. But you also need to talk about these in the in the discussion boards, right? But for the weeks that we're only covering the Geary text, you need, or the text in the Geary book, I should say. You need to write a 4 to 5 page paper. I will provide some prompts for these. These will be fairly open-ended prompts, but and you'll even have some choice of which prompt you want to ride on and which sources you want to ride on. Okay. The other two papers are unprompted, and these are on the longer primary sources. So the Galbert of Bruges, the murder text, is the first one, and then the Abelard and Heloise, the tragic romance text, is the second one. For one of these, you need to write a longer paper. You can choose which one you want to write on. So the shorter paper is also 4 to 5 pages, like the Geary ones, and then the longer paper is 6 to 8 pages. This is meant to get you to dig in a little more, into the text. And all of these should have some kind of argument. You should, have a good research question you're asking of the text, and engage these things at a really deep level. But you can choose which one you want to write that on. There's a book review of the Herlihy monograph, so that's another assignment. And then I'm not actually going to make you take a final exam in this class. I hear cheering in the future for when students read this. But I am going to, and so this might look a little bit like a final exam. This is going to be more reflective in nature. I'll ask you a series of questions about the content and about the course itself, and just ask you to respond, right? Give this some thought. I mean, this is worth the equivalent of one of the short papers. I expect you to write, a fair amount. I mean, don't just give me short answers or anything. I want you to really reflect on what you've learned, and I will try to guide you with the questions that I ask along those productive lines. I do accept late assignments, but I'm going to penalize them 5% per day late. The primary delivery vehicle is our online video lectures. I mean, you need to read the material that's assigned. You need to watch these video lectures. I will hold once a week a excuse me. Sorry for the sneeze there. A synchronous session on Zoom. This is going to be Thursdays at 11 a.m. At least this is in summer A 2025, if that's the case. And so if you want to show up and actually have a face-to-face or at least virtual, discussion with me, right, then that is available for you. I intend for this to be more than just like an office hour, though. I mean, I actually want to have discussions about the material with you. And so I would encourage you to make time for that. In the past, I don't know, it looks like I didn't finish a thought here. I apologize. But in any case, this face-to-face discussion in the past, the students who have attended these have tended to do pretty well in the course, right? And so if you can make time to do that, if you have to work or something like that, I totally understand if that time simply doesn't work for you, but it is helpful. I will record these, and so you can go and watch them after the fact. If I'm the only one who shows up, I'm not going to, actually talk. Somebody has to show up for me to do something with that. This grading scale is inaccurate. I apologize. It's the standard grading scale for this class, which is 93% to 100 is an A, and 90 to 92 is an A minus, and so forth and so on. This is from an earlier iteration. Apologies for that. Didn't catch that. If you do not participate during the first 10 days of the course, you're going to be withdrawn. If you are inactive for a 7-day period, then I'm going to be asking you what's going on. Are you still in the class? And I'll have to evaluate at that point whether to withdraw you or not. You need to be looking and participating constantly in this course. The course itself runs week to week. And so week 1 has a set of material, and you have to finish all of that by the end of the week. In summer of 2025, this is the first week. You have to make the first discussion board post by the 22nd of May, and you have to do the responses by May 25th. There is no other assignment the first week than making these discussion board posts. But in the second week, you've got the first short paper, which is due by the end of the week, in addition to the discussion board posts, and then that kind of follows from there, right? And so you can't just take a week off, or even, a few days off, right? You've got to be into the material. You've got to be participating. and you get graded every week on your discussion boards and even on papers. So stay up with the course, pay attention, do not let this lapse. It's really easy, I think, in the summer, especially if you're working and engaged in other things, to kind of, take a break, stop paying attention. That's a good recipe to not do well and potentially even to fail the course. So just be aware of that. The reading should be pretty straightforward. In the Geary text, these are source numbers, not page numbers. And so the Geary book has like 65 sources in it. We're not going to read all of them, but for each week you've got, a handful. The first week is like 6 of them. Some of these are quite short. Some of them are, a bit longer. Second week you've only got 4, but these are a little more substantial. These are primary sources, and they're really important primary sources from this period. So don't neglect those. Make sure you're into the primary sources and that informs your discussion. So hopefully that's pretty straightforward. Let's look briefly at the Canvas page here. And so this is the Canvas page for the course. The most important link here is modules. You'll see here, for instance, here's the textbook. If I pull this up, this is like 9.5 megabytes, so it's a pretty big file. But you've got the textbook here. If you want to use that, if you want to get a hard copy, I certainly won't stop you. But you have the textbook available, so you can use that. Same with the Geary Readings book here. And then I actually have provided a PDF copy of the Abelard and Heloise text. You can definitely buy a hard copy if you like. Each week we'll have a module. And so everything, this is your one-stop shopping kind of thing, right? Every single week is going to have everything you need to do for the week right here. And so there's going to be, here, this tells you what you need to read. These are the video lectures. If you click on one of these video lectures, you probably, these are on YouTube. I'm going to have to click on that, right? And so here's, I won't listen to that, but yeah, so that's, that's what you need to watch for the week. These are arranged in order, the order kind of in which you need to watch them. And so, everything you need to work through in week 1. Here's the discussion board. You can see that it's, there's a few questions and things that I'm asking here that you need to respond to, or if you don't want to respond to those, you got something else you want to talk about with the Reeks material, that's totally okay. But, you need to just keep up, and by the end of the week, you should have completed all of this stuff. Actually, by Thursday, you should have completed much of it and, have made your first post on the discussion board. So your assignments will be here, your videos will be here, and then week 2 we'll move on. I already, kind of created a shell for week 2 with just the readings. I haven't gotten the other material. So this page is under construction, but hopefully that's pretty straightforward. I will post the Zoom link under announcements for this course, and any other relevant information, important information, I will send out announcements. Okay. All right, so hopefully that gives you a pretty good indication of what you need to do in the course, and you're prepared to do this. So I will look forward to engaging with this material. This is a topic that, as I said, is endlessly fascinating to me. It's one that I have devoted my scholarly life to. So hopefully you enjoy it as well.